How do you win more work, get more of the right projects with the right clients in the right locations? Well, first you have to land work and then deliver projects with incredible customer service so that people will refer you and even do more business with you down the road. In order to accomplish that, you have to recruit your whole company into that effort, including your project managers. In today's Construction Genius episode, my guest Ken Harms, who has 40 years experience working in construction, dives deeply into the doer-seller model that is focused on teaching your project managers how to think like salespeople, not necessarily to sell more change orders on the projects that you're building, but to develop long-term relationships with your clients by delivering on promises. This doer-seller model is designed to take you out of an engineering mindset into a people service mindset. And with that mindset, develop those long-term relationships that will bring more of the right jobs with the right clients in the right locations into your firm. So let's dive right into the conversation. This is Eric Anderton, and you're listening to Construction Genius, a leadership masterclass. Thomas Edison said that genius is 1% inspiration and 99% perspiration. If you're a construction leader, you know all about the perspiration, and this show is all about the 1% inspiration that you can add to your hard work to help you to improve your leadership. Ken, welcome to Construction Genius.
Thank you, Eric. It's great to be here.
Yeah,
Thanks
please introduce yourself to the audience.
Yeah, sure. So I'm Ken Harms. I've spent over 40 years in the construction industry, leading mostly business development and strategy across multiple firms. What I've learned is that winning work has far less to do with proposals and far more to do with people, relationships, and building trust and how you show up for your clients consistently. And today I've decided that I'm open my own business, and I'm coaching construction executives and project managers, and mostly on the doer-seller model, but also on presentation skills and so forth. So my passion is helping firms win work the right way.
It's beautiful. So 40 years, what's the biggest change you've seen in construction in 40 years?
I would say, first off, technology, massive strides in technology for sure. And you can pick any one of them, right? BIM and lean and the delivery methods changing to more negotiated, seam at risk, progressive design build, and so forth. But then what you and I are talking about is a massive shift about, I don't know, I'm thinking it was about 20 years ago it started with doer-seller. That in the past, large GCs and CMs relied on the so-called rainmakers, right? And now they've recognized that owners want to meet the people that are actually going to be on the job. And business development still has a role, but the doer-seller model, I think, has been we're not coming back from that one. And then, most recently, as you well know, Eric, AI and what AI can do in construction, but also in terms of business development.
Okay, so give us a clear definition of what you mean by doer-seller.
Sure. So when I coach folks on it, I say, look, the doer, what you guys are all, that's why you went to school, right? You got into construction, you got your degree, you came out, whether you were called a PE or a PM or a superintendent, you were a doer. You were a builder of projects. And the seller, that mindset shift is a builder of relationships. And so a doer-seller is someone that can help their firm win work and gain more revenue because they have a clear understanding of the importance of building relationships and being of service to clients, not just executing the work, but also caring about the client.
Okay, so the first thing that pops into my mind is the tension that you brought up there is, I didn't go to school to sell. I went to school to build. How do you begin to open that conversation? If I'm the owner of a construction company and I see the logic of what you're talking about, how do I begin to open that conversation with my project managers?
Yeah, and that's a great question, and that comes up a lot. I think the realization for anyone in the C-suite these days is that in their companies, everyone is responsible for sales, right? So The old adage is sales is the lifeblood of any organization. Clearly, lifeblood for construction. You need backlog as king. But again, we've got to get everybody involved on that. And so one of the big roadblocks to that is the mind shift that it takes to get for project managers and superintendents that they might say, well, I didn't sign up for this, right? But it's like, well, again, what I find in talking to folks initially is that, look, you've got this thing in your head about sales and you don't like it. Maybe you had a bad experience with it, not necessarily in our industry, but just, getting a new car or whatever. You're thinking, that's not me. But if you shift that mindset from selling to serving, I think that can really capture what this is all about. So that's kind of the starting line for it. Does that make sense?
Yeah, it does. So let's talk about that, selling to serving. But by serving, what do you mean? Give me an example of what you're talking about there.
Look, let's talk about a couple of different components of our industry, right?
Yeah.
So professional PMs and CMs, they're working as the owner's agent. So they should feel connected and care for the client. General contractors have always been, for the most part, they're taught, look, here's what we expect our profit to be on this project. Now, project manager and your team go out there and deliver what we're promised, execute the contract and bring in the money. And then it has to shift to not just that. It's not just the bottom line, but it's also about caring for the client and really getting to know the client and building a strong, lasting relationship in that. When you embrace this doer-seller mindset, I think you become more valuable to your firm. You become more influential in the industry. Maybe you feel more fulfilled personally on your work because it's extending beyond the project and it's building something that lasts. Projects end, relationships can last forever. So, and at the end of it, you make more money because you've helped your company win work, and you're probably going to get promoted if you're really good at this. So does that answer your question, Eric?
Yeah, but let me ask you this. How does the way that the project is bid, whether it's negotiated, hard bid, or whatever the case is, design build, how does that impact then the ability for this doer-seller model to be executed?
Yeah, that's a great question. And so initially the thought is you won the job on Wednesday and you're low, right?
Yeah.
And then the team gets, here you go out there and do the job and execute the work versus, where we have been selected based on our qualifications. Perhaps price was an element of it, cost for pre-con, fee, but it wasn't lump sum. It was best qualification process, right? A BQS process. And we're seeing more of that in the industry, as you well know. So whether it's CM at risk, design build, progressive design build, and so forth. So to answer your question, if you're a lump sum bidder, it's going to be a little bit more of a challenge to embrace the doer-seller model, but it can still be done and it should be done. On the other side, you're really set up because the whole pre-positioning process took longer. It wasn't just, here are the bids, let's make a decision to go, here are the specs, let's go bid this job. It was a decision that may have been made a year or two ago that we're pre-positioning for this negotiated project that is going to be very profitable for us. And so during that process of pre-positioning, you develop that relationship with the client, with the architect, all the stakeholders. So it naturally embraces the doer-seller model. But as I said, and I think this has to come from the C-suite, has to come from the GM. It has to be, regardless of how we win the work, we still have to care for the client, because today we might win this on a lump sum bid. A year from now, that client may shift and go with a qualification-based selection.
Yeah.
Will he remember us as, a firm that really didn't take care of him? You can't change your spots, right? If you left a bad impression, but you got the job done for at least what you bid on bid day, it probably wasn't the final cost of the project. But how did you treat the client? How did you treat the inspector? How did you treat the architect and so forth? So long answer there, Eric, but I think it helps with the delivery method, but it shouldn't be a roadblock to still implementing these kinds of changes.
All right, quick break to talk about my book, Construction Genius. This is what I want you to do. Go to Amazon, search for the book, read all of the 5-star reviews, because there's a ton of them. Over 50 to be precise. And the reason I want you to read them is because real people wrote those reviews who've actually read the book. And it'll give you an idea of why you should go and buy a copy right now on Amazon. And here's the deal. If you purchase 10 or more copies for your company, and then send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, I'll come in via Zoom and do a 1-hour Q&A and a bonus training session with your team at no charge. I normally charge $4,500 for an hour of my time. And again, for you, I'll do it at no charge if you buy 10 or more copies of my book. And the reason you should buy it is all in the title. It's effective, hands-on, practical, simple, no BS, leadership, strategy, sales, and marketing advice for construction companies. So if you're in the construction industry, this book is for you. So you can get it on Amazon. You can also get it on Audible in the audio version as well, narrated by yours truly. And I know you'll really enjoy it. So go out and get the book. And now back to the interview. How do you, in this doer seller model, how do the best PMs manage the sausage making? And let me explain what I mean by that. Transparency obviously is useful in our relationships with our clients, but sometimes for the sake of the smoothness of the project, not looking to hide something from someone, we don't necessarily tell them exactly how the sausage is made. In this doer seller model, how should the skilled PM approach those kinds of issues when working with a client?
Well, I think that, issue kind of stands on its own, but I think there needs to be a high level expectation of transparency and authenticity in the relationship. And so you can't act one way and then promise one thing and do something else. There's lots of stuff that don't necessarily need to be completely shown with an owner on a project, but they need to come away from the experience believing that you were honest, had integrity, and were very authentic and transparent. And those are key words, right? So, I can give you examples of firms that would go into contract negotiations and would try to flip the contract from a CM at risk, open book, GMP to let's make that now a lump sum, right? They want to take that GMP and convert it to lump sum. And when they do that, everything that's in that GMP is now closed, right? And so that says something about the firm. If the owner has asked for it to be an open book and your first meeting with them is, let's change your contract.
Right.
You're not off to a great start there. So do you share absolutely everything? Perhaps not, but I think there has to be the overall, personality of the firm and the team on the job needs to be, we're going to be transparent and honest with you and get the job done and keep our word.
How do you incentivize then PMs to embrace this model? Obviously, you can tell them this is the way we do it and you're going to do it. But again, if you're shifting it or if you're trying to build it, the doer seller model into a more sort of systematic way of approaching your work, how do you incentivize those PMs?
Well, I think, again, if hopefully it's going to be fully embraced at the GM and C-suite level of the firm, right?
Yeah, that's
and
key.
So still they're going to be more than likely incentivized with, here's our goal for the project. I think that's where it takes place. In the past, it might be, obviously, let's execute the contract, time, cost, quality, safety. We have goals in all those 4 categories. Let's make sure we hit those goals. Yep. And we've run the numbers and here's what we expect. Here's our fee and here's what we expect to be our profitability at the end of the day. John, our project manager, and Harry, our superintendent, here's what we need to deliver. I think at the GM level of the C-suite has to add the goal inside there. We want the client to be absolutely delighted with us. And if that means at times we need to sacrifice a little bit on the profitability side, so be it, because we're in it for the long haul. And again, I can give you some example. When I was with Turner Construction in Sacramento, my GM there was Frank Dizovi, and Frank was one of the best builders I've ever met in my career. And he got this 100%. And the clients, we had repeat clients, one after another. And I felt like he and I made a really great team because we were in alignment on what this was really all about. And as the GM, he would have to sign off on some of these things, right? It's like, hey, take care of the client. If it reduces our profitability a little bit, that's okay. You're not handing over the bank to them, but if we come out of this project still profitable and we've got a great reference and we set ourselves up for the next project. And that goes back, Eric, to the creation of your business plan and sales plan in the beginning. And if you're chasing projects or you're chasing clients, or and that's just chasing a contract, then maybe you don't care about any of this. But if you're chasing a client and building relationships and building a reputation in this marketplace, people are going to know how you perform and the behavior. And I've always said that behavior is a differentiator. It's not just about the tools that are in the tool belt, because we all have them. We all have BIM. We're all using Lean. We all have, all of that. But how does your team execute in the field, and what's their behavior like? And that behavior can really be a differentiator.
So there's a subtlety here that I think is important to point out, because when you use the word seller, what can pop into people's minds is, okay, great, let me see if I can get a change order in this project and get some more money on this particular project. But it sounds like what you're saying is the emphasis on the selling is more in light of the service, almost in view of the long-term relationship. What you're selling is not necessarily more work on this project or a change order to make more money, but you're selling that long-term relationship. Is that right?
That's 100% right, Eric. And so, yeah, the selling part is the service to the client, which is ultimately going to lead to a great reference and the ability for us to get more work from that client, and for them to either serve as a reference for us as we pursue other projects in the marketplace. So, when you are, if I can, please expand on this a little bit. I mentioned the difference between a professional PM/CM firm and a GC firm. So, if you're a project manager and you're a doer seller for a construction management firm, you're representing the owner, you're the owner's agent. The selling part could be inside of that contract or inside of that account. Your firm might offer other services. Let's make a simple example and just say, yeah, we're doing professional CM services, but did you know we have a division that does commissioning? So you could introduce that additional service and perhaps they want you for commissioning, right? A little different on the GC side. I don't want you to be going in there selling a change order. Let's get what we're owed and what we deserve. But it's really about positioning for the future.
Yeah, that's really good. So then how do you teach a PM? Because again, I can think of this engineering mindset, right? All I care about is I need to get from here to here. And then once I'm here, I need to get from here to here. So how do you teach a PM to spot opportunities without turning them into pushy salespeople?
Yeah, I think you and I have worked with a lot of engineers, because you brought a smile to my face right away. Yeah, that can be a challenge. The other challenge, I digress just for a minute. Sure. The other challenge with engineer types can be more introverted. This doesn't come natural to them.
No.
And so it's really incumbent on leadership to recognize that and provide training. I think that can be a downfall of all this. You just introduce it and say, here's what we're doing, or corporate said we're doing this. And everyone looks around like, how do we do it? Right? What does this mean? I don't feel comfortable with this. So the training is really important for them to get, so they understand what we're really trying to accomplish.
So if I was going to train my guys on that, where should I start?
Well, that's a self-serving question, since I provide those.
No, I understand. But let's say I wasn't bringing you in, right? But what would be the first couple of things that I really need to address to communicate this?
I would think the definition and the why. Why are we doing this, right? And so that explanation to your team is that, as I said, we saw this happen 15, 20 years ago, a shift in the marketplace. And you're always going to have, hopefully your firm has one, maybe two rainmakers, and they used to be the principals of the firm or whatever.
Yeah.
But the pure business developer, that has really changed over the years. When you and I were in the business a few years ago, as I was, at least for the folks that I worked with, a business developer had a really important role. It was the development of the strategy and the pipeline, negotiating the contracts. I mean, it was a very comprehensive. Today, a business developer might be more of, hey, we want you to attend these meetings and golf with this guy and go to these conferences. And I don't want to say negative things, but I call that person kind of a knife and fork business developer versus a strategic thinker.
Yeah.
And so if you have, business development should be in that meeting too, right? As should marketing, and a complete aligned team in an explanation of, guys, this is what we're doing and why we're doing it. The marketplace has shifted. They want to meet people like you. And so that's what's really important for us, is to have project managers and superintendents meeting our clients. That's what they want. So we've got to deliver that. And then provide the training to them, like, here's what's important. Here's what it means. And take away that fear and that anxiety that a lot of folks will have. Like, I didn't sign up for this.
Yeah.
What do you mean? Right?
Would some of that training be like teaching your PMs how to go to a networking event and talk to people, or giving them some advice on that? Would that be part of it?
Oh, yeah. That's great. That's 100%. And right now I am coaching a number of firms, and that's one of the things that frequently comes up. Even a lunch meeting, I try to coach a project manager going to a meeting or networking event.
So let's stop there. So give us some insights. You're coaching someone who's going to a lunch meeting. What are some key insights or tips that someone can take and use?
Yeah. Thanks. Good question. So let's say they're going to an PM from a GC firm is going to meet with lunch for an architect, right? Yep. The typical scenario might be they meet there, they know each other a little bit. They'll talk about, hey, did you see the 49er game, right? Yeah. And it gets going very slowly, and it's all very nice. And, then they have lunch, and the takeaway is, this guy really, really likes me. Why is he, geez, John, why does he like you? Well, we talked about football and golf and da-da-da-da-da. What I coach is, let's make a list of questions, not about me, about them. Let's show that we care. And so, for example, after you get the niceties out of the way, questions like, so what's like the biggest concern you guys have in your firm right now? For us, recruitment. We're having a concern about finding good people. How about you?
Yeah.
Are you using an in-house recruiter or not? Why not? Geez, Joe, what's your favorite delivery method? Oh, it's progressive design build. Geez, why is that? Who's your favorite contractor that you go to, and why? How would you rate us as compared to some of your other GCs that you've worked with? Have thoughtful, meaningful questions, because whether it's an architect or a prospective owner or a subcontractor, after that lunch meeting, they're going to come away and say, you know what? Ken really thought about this, and he asked some very thoughtful questions. He made me think. Then I want to get that next meeting with them, right? So that's the kind of thing. Same with networking. A lot of times that's a big fear for folks going to a networking event, particularly for introverted engineers. Yep. There's going to be hundreds of people there. What do? They find somebody from the same company, latch onto them, or their best friend that they used to work with, and they don't meet anybody. So set up a goal. Sit down with them. Again, somebody in leadership, sit down and say, look, here's what I did when I had to go to networking events. We know who's going to be there. Target 3 people. I want you to meet 3 people, have meaningful conversations, and then write up a real quick summary report afterwards and send it out to us. And let's take a look at what you learned. So, and you can expand this to conferences, Eric, too. Yeah. It drives me crazy how much money firms spend to send people to conferences, and they come back and they don't have anything to share. Nothing of substance is shared, right? So it's that, look, you have a pre-construction meeting before we go out on the job site. We have a huddle. Let's do the same mindset when we're going to a networking event or a lunch. Think about it. And I want that client, that interaction, I want them to come away from that with, wow, that was different. That's real. That was very thoughtful. I learned something new, something like that.
Yeah. So it's interesting. On the subject of networking events, I think one of the mistakes that a lot of companies make is they spend too much time networking with their competition or their peers and not enough time networking with their customers. How do you coach people in terms of the networking events that they choose to attend?
Yeah, boy, you hit a nerve for me. I see a lot of firms lose a lot of money on going to events like that. The simple little mantra is follow the money, right?
Yeah.
Let's not go to a meeting and talk to our peers. I was very active in organizations like CMAA, AGC, DBIA. You got to have some discipline before you go to a meeting like that. It's natural. It's easy to go and, hey, there's Eric. I think I'll go talk to him. We'll have a drink. We'll talk football. It'll be great. I didn't learn anything. I didn't meet a client. You've got to have the discipline and instruct them. Again, I go back to training. And ultimately, when we do it enough times, it becomes company culture.
Yeah.
Right? So as this concept spreads, it becomes part of the culture of the company, and everyone is doing it, and everyone is thinking a little bit differently about all these events, pre-positioning steps, networking events, conferences, all of it.
So going back to the earlier question about how you can teach PMs to spot opportunities, when you were talking about scenarioing out that architectural conversation, you talked about delivery method a little bit. I'm assuming project type, keeping your ears and eyes open for different kinds of project types that are a fit for your company, and then hearing perhaps some issues that come up in terms of customer service or a lack of customer service. How else can you help PMs to spot those opportunities? Because again, not many people, they just kind of miss stuff sometimes, whereas like someone who's really intuitive and a sales guy or gal can kind of see things quickly and notice things in people's, faces that cause them to ask additional questions. You know what I mean?
Yeah. Those folks tend to be a little bit more intuitive.
Yeah.
Maybe have a little higher emotional IQ than others, but it doesn't mean that skill can't be taught. So
yes.
I think it's, over time, there'll be a recognition of the types of questions and the comments of what can be picked up, but sometimes you need to generate that question.
Right.
You mentioned a great one, which it was something like, what keeps you up at night, or what's the biggest risk you see in this project, or tell me about the best project you've ever been a part of. I think we all have that, right?
Yes.
We all have that best project, and you can see the person you're engaging with, their face will just light up. It's like, man, let me tell you about this project I did. It was 20 years ago. It's still my favorite project.
Yeah.
So it's teaching these kinds of things, subtleties, to a project manager, and constantly repeating it, and practicing it, even if they're practicing it in the office. But I go back to, there's got to be some consistent training available to folks like this. It's just a little bit of a mind shift for them to be thinking more like this.
Think about the last time you promoted someone into a leadership role and it failed. Why did it fail? I can tell you one reason. People know how to build projects, but they don't know how to build and lead teams of people. Construction comes with its challenges that only insiders truly understand. Generic leadership training doesn't cut it. You need a program to train your leaders built specifically for construction professionals led by an industry expert. And my online course, The Shift, is exactly that course. It has 5 modules. It'll teach your people how to control their calendars and reduce stress and embrace chaos and accomplish their critical tasks. It will teach them the 3 essential messages they have to communicate every day in order to motivate and lead their team effectively. It'll show them how to build and lead a high-performing team, give them a framework for running effective meetings so they'll be able to solve problems in less than an hour, and also give them a higher perspective on their leadership that will enable them to work on the business and on their teams and not get stuck in the weeds micromanaging. So go out to my website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, read all about the course, and then enroll yourself and your leaders in the course, and I guarantee that it will transform your leadership. If it does not, you take the whole course and you didn't get benefit from it, you just send me an email, eric@constructiongenius.com, and I will cheerfully refund you 100% of your money. I'm really confident this course will transform your leadership. So again, go out to the website, theshift.constructiongenius.com, learn more about the course, and start taking it today.
Now, you've worked with some really large companies in your career. How does this doer seller model help smaller firms compete against some of those larger companies?
Yeah. Certainly it can be used by firms of all sizes, and perhaps even a greater opportunity for the smaller firms. So small to mid-sized firms, they're going to be challenged on overhead, right?
Yeah.
So they have to make the best of what they've got. And sometimes that doesn't include, a large business development team. It may not even have a business development team. So really, it's going to be the principal, the GM, the PXs. These folks are going to be the ones. And that's okay. If they've learned the process, and by process, I mean, not just the active listening skills, but also the necessary pre-positioning steps on a project, For example, if that smaller firm was to get to know the project, who are the key decision makers, go meet the architect, have the owner visit a very similar job that you have built, or visit your office and confirm who your competition is. And ultimately, if you could, through this relationship building, if that firm could build a champion inside the owner organization, that's how you win. And by champion, I mean, somebody who's going to stand up and say, I want that firm.
So that's one of the challenges I find with a lot of companies. I was working with the GC a number of years ago, and they were talking about a bid they were working on. And it was, for them, it was a big bid. It was like $50-60 million. And so I asked them, so who's the final decision maker? And, this was way down the process where they were doing their presentations and spending a lot of money and all that kind of stuff. And they're like, I don't know. I was blown away. You don't know who the final decision maker is.
Yeah.
Do you find that's often a challenge in this sort of the way that people do business and sell work, is that they don't do the hard work necessary to find out the truth about those dynamics that you were just describing in terms of decision making and influencing and all those kinds of things?
Yeah, I would say the larger firms, at least the firms I've been a part of, that was always one of the top questions to ask, right? So is it funded? Yep. Who's the decision maker? Maybe a smaller firm that might escape them a little bit. But the decision maker and building a champion, that could be two different people. But the champion needs to be one of, if not the key decision maker, right?
Yep.
Yeah.
That's really interesting. So what do you think will happen to firms that don't adopt this type of model in the next 5 to 10 years?
A couple things on that. I would say if they don't adopt this model and they really don't have any way to differentiate themselves other than being low on bid day, I think they're in a lot of trouble.
Yeah.
That's very simply put, because if you want to play in the world of negotiated winning work, you really have to. You have to invest in the training and the doer seller model. And there's a lot of other pieces to it, as you well know. But you're going to relegate yourself to forcing your team to be low on bid day if you don't adopt.
Yeah. So if you pilot this doer seller model, which PMs do you think they should start with? Because you might think, maybe I'll go with the younger guys who haven't been around for a while and they're not stuck in their ways, or maybe I need to go with the older guys and gals who've got some experience and, so therefore they can see those opportunities. What would your advice be there?
Well, I tell you, with one firm I'm working with, we started at the PX level. Okay.
Yep.
So, and they had about 5 PXs over 5 key market segments, 5, healthcare, higher ed, et cetera. They had PX leadership in those 5 categories. So the first thing I did was a training with them. And then, so now they can train the trainers, but then we're also bring the PMs and the superintendents inside the tent as well. But it's coming from the top down, and they're modeling the behavior and then what it can become, Eric, is now you're showing your PMs, hey, you want to get promoted to PX? You have to do this.
Yeah.
You have to be really good at this. Just like you see Susan's getting promoted because she's been really good at that, or she's become a PX because of this. So that's one way to do it. I think, I don't want to say top down, very hierarchical, but I think it's important that the messaging is coming from the top.
Absolutely.
And then the PXs and then the PMs after that.
Absolutely. I think so too, because it's a mindset, right? And it's not so much, let me give you 5 ways to close more business. It's more a holistic way of approaching the way that you're building work in view of building long-term relationships with people, both for the referrals, like you were saying, and for the other opportunities that client may have down the road.
That's 100% right. Yep.
Okay. So tell us a little bit more about the work that you do, how people can get in touch with you and connect with you.
Yeah. Well, thank you. Like you, Eric, I've just written a book.
Oh, no way. Cool.
Yeah. It's at the publishers. It'll probably be out in, 3 months or so. It's called Building Trust, Winning Work.
That's beautiful.
Yeah. And I have, my website is www.kenharms.com. And, they can get in touch with me through that. And what I'm currently doing is pretty much what you and I have been talking about for the last 45 minutes or so, which is coaching. I feel like having been, in 40 years in the business, as a side note, I coached high school basketball in Sacramento for about a decade in my spare time. I was an assistant, wasn't a head coach.
Yeah.
But I just felt like that was a calling, that coaching people, putting people in a position that they can be successful in, understanding their strengths and weaknesses, and on the, when it's not game day, you're working on their weaknesses and building more of their strengths, and then it all comes together as a team. And construction is a team business. And so now in this chapter of my life, I feel as though coaching the next generation and helping them become successful, that's really fun to see people accelerate their careers. And so I offer trainings, one-on-one coaching, team coachings, and trainings.
Excellent. We'll put the links in the show notes then. And let me ask you this then. Just tell us, who is your ideal client? Who is the ideal person or company that you can most help?
Oh, that's a great question. Thank you. I wouldn't want to limit it, but based on experience so far, there's two kinds. One, which would be a kind of a mid-sized general contractor who's looking to take it to the next level. And when initially meeting me would say things like, we need to level up. We really need to grow. We have a very young team, things like that. And they recognize that we need some help. We need some discipline. We need some process. We've been growing, but now all of a sudden it's like, oh my gosh, now we need some more thoughtful, disciplined sales process to add to it. That's one example. And then the second might be a little bit larger firm. And they're recognizing that maybe this has been a weakness of theirs and they need to sharpen it a little bit. And so, yeah.
Excellent. Awesome. Well, I really appreciate you coming on. I do wish you the best with your book. And please make sure that you're promoting that, because I love the title, Building Trust, Winning Work. I'm really looking forward to seeing that come out.
Oh, man, thank you. And I looked at yours last night online. It looks fabulous.
Yeah, it's been awesome. People really enjoy it. And I know based on your experience that your book will be a success too. So I wish you the best.
Oh, I appreciate that very much. Thank you, Eric. Thanks for having me today.
Yeah, my pleasure.
Thank you for listening to my interview with Ken. I recorded this in November of 2025, so 3 months from there is, about February, March of 2026. And so if you're listening later on to this podcast, check out his book, Building Trust and Winning Work. What a great title. Something that we should all want to do in our careers and in our businesses. Thank you for listening today to Construction Genius. Please give the show a rating and review wherever you get your podcasts. Share this interview with other people who you think will benefit from listening to it, and we'll catch you on the next episode.
Thank you for listening to this episode of Construction Genius. Hope you found that 1% of inspiration to help you in the next few days. If you like the show, please give us a 5-star review on iTunes, share it with other construction leaders who you think would benefit, and always remember that the show is brought to you by Kick-Ass Meetings. I've been working with construction leaders since 2004, teaching them how to run extremely effective problem-solving meetings that gets their people collaborating, taps into their creativity. And to get yourself a free copy of the Kick-Ass Meeting Report, go to www.ericanderton.com/kickassmeetings. Grab yourself that free report, read it, use it in your business. You'll find it extremely useful. And thanks again for listening.